So just to start off, I've got a very short saying, quote, extract for you. Just sit back and listen. Here comes Edward Bear. Bump, 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 down the stairs. Sometimes he thinks there must be a better way of coming down the stairs. But he's too busy bumping to find it. We had this little chap mentioned by one of our panel speakers this morning. Who is he? Winnie the Pooh. Yeah. There's a lot you can learn from Winnie the Pooh. But this particular one that I'd like to just acknowledge and recognise the fact that you've taken the day out, it is to stop bumping. It is to just rethink your processes, practices, behaviours, thoughts, and to then decide what it is you want to carry on doing and what you want to change. And for this next hour, I'm going to ask you to think and reflect on your thoughts about yourselves from an impact perspective and from a happiness/confidence perspective. So what is it that's supporting you and what might be undermining you? Because stuff happens, and we all acknowledge that. And the idea is that we are stuck in our own realities. And it's a very real one until something happens to change your reality. And then you're a little bit woken up because you have what's called that paradigm shift. And when you're thinking about yourselves as a leader, you maybe have one particular mindset, and there may be other mindsets that help and support you in other ways through different roles that you have, both in work and in life. So the idea of reality being an illusion, albeit a persistent one, it is that illusion until something comes up and changes it. And what's real for you right now might be changed by a thought or by a comment, either by somebody else on your table, somebody else in the room, or something that I may say during the course of the next hour. It might then just shift the thinking slightly. But to say that if you're wanting to walk out of here having had a magic wand and a sprinkle of fairy dust and, hey, henceforth thou shalt be confident forevermore, that's a little unrealistic. So I'm not looking to do that, but what I am looking to do in the next hour is to give you some hints and tips and thoughts about how you could, if you wanted to, give yourself that extra boost. And it might be that you don't need it right now. It might be that that extra boost is something that you need at a point in time in the future, and then you'll draw on it. Or it might be you, it might not be you. It might be somebody that you work with that needs the boost, that you then share something with them. So that's my hope and thoughts for the next hours, just to go through some thoughts on confidence. And the reason I speak on the subject is because I haven't always been confident. And I would say I am now not always confident. There may be this reality, an illusion, an albeit persistent one, but just accepting that's something that I've worked on, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that when I get towards the end of the presentation. Okay. There is no happiness without action. This is something that Benjamin Disraeli said, and I'd like to take his quote and tweak it slightly to there is no confidence building without action. Because if you are feeling, has anybody been in the situation, or maybe you've all been in the situation, where you felt a little bit unconfident about something at some point? Yeah? And if you stay put, if you sit and dwell on that particular situation, does it go away? No. Sometimes it even gets worse, but it certainly doesn't go away. When does it go away? It's when you do something about it. So it's about building your confidence, and it's about doing something, so taking action that's important. And I think also that there's a link, and this is one of the things that I'd like to research. The imposter phenomenon I think is really interesting, and I'm doing some studies myself and need to put a research proposal together to decide what specifically I will be researching. And The imposter phenomenon is one, but this link between confidence and happiness is another one that I think is also very interesting. So I have to decide and make these thoughts. But what is it that makes us feel confident, and what is it that makes us feel happy? And would you like a little bit more of it? Generally, there are times when we say, no, I'm fine, thank you. And then other times it's like, where is it? Where's it gone? And we don't realise that we had confidence or that we were feeling happy, sometimes until we're not. And it's some strategies to give that an extra boost that I want to talk about. And one of the things that I've come across is from a researcher called Sonia Lyubomirsky. It's taken me a while to pronounce her name. But Sonia Lyubomirsky has written a book called The How of Happiness, and a number of other things besides. But in particular, has been researching some specific steps that you can take that enable you to feel happy. And I would suggest that when you're feeling happy, you can also have a feeling of confidence. You tend not to feel confident when you're feeling unhappy. And with her research, 50% of your happiness quota, so everybody has a pie, might be different sized pies, but everybody has a pie, 50% of that pie is your genetic set point. So it comes from your parents and your very early childhood upbringing. What I find so interesting is only 10% in her research is linked to circumstances. 40% can be by what you do, your own intentional activities, things that are within your control. But I think most of us think it's a bit more like this. I think that certainly I used to think that it was more to do with the circumstances, the situations I found myself in, than things that I could do something about. Would you agree? There are times when this is how the pie looks to us. We're in this stuff, we can't do anything about it. Stop telling me it's within my control. So how can you change your pie to get back to what it really is and to look at this level of intentional activity and taking control over that 40%? Because that will make a big difference. Regardless of what your genetic set point is, you've got control over increasing that 40%. What could you do? And why would you want to do it? Any thoughts on why you might like to be happier, more confident? Why? What's the point? Just seems like a good idea.
Makes it worthwhile getting up in the morning.
Makes it, yeah, thank you. It can make life worthwhile getting up in the morning. Yes, it can give you some meaning and some purpose to life.
You want things to change in your life. You want things to change.
You want things to change, yes. So it's about making steps to make those changes happen.
Just about you as a person, it's the impact it has.
That's also so very true. It's not just about you as a person, it's about the impact that you have on others. Yeah, definitely. So thinking about that. But what's happened when you look at the research, the impact that an increase in happiness has is that you become more productive. So it's like this happy workforce and healthy workforce is also a productive workforce. And you'll see that within your staff and your teams when things are working well, more gets done. Then you've got more resilience in the face of hardship. As Paul alluded to earlier in his role as that director of nursing, it's not an easy life. And equally, it's not an easy life where you're at either. It's just saying that when stuff happens, as it inevitably will, you have more resilience and more resources and feel more able to deal with it. And you get an increase in the immune system. So you are generally more healthy. You're less susceptible to that common cold. Sounds like a good idea. So how do you do it? What makes you feel happier? Any thoughts? What makes you feel like, oh, yes, that's good? Any thoughts? What happens?
Sun shining.
Sun's shining, yay! I know, it started to rain, didn't it, this morning? But yeah, sunshine, generally, that does make a big difference, doesn't it? Who's the one that sings the song "Always Take the Weather with You"? Is it Crowded House? Yeah. And it's about keeping that sunshine inside of you, because it's not always going to be out there. But yes, so sunshine makes you feel happy. What else makes you feel happy?
Being in control of your day, not it being in control of you.
Yeah, so taking control of your day, not your day taking control of you.
Anticipation.
Yeah. Anticipation, yes, something to look forward to. So booking a holiday in advance, or a night out or something like that, that anticipation. So actually that anticipation can be far better than the event itself. And that does certainly have a lasting impact. Yeah. What else helps you feel happy?
Sometimes diverting from the norm, so something that's slightly different from the getting up doing the same thing every day, but perhaps knowing that you're going to be doing something slightly different that day.
Yeah. Yeah.
A break from routine.
A break from routine. And from Sonia Lyubomirsky's research, what she also says is variety in these intentional activities is important. So you say, oh, well, this makes me feel happy. Well, if you get it every day, it's not going to have the same impact. So say a friend of mine moved out to Kuala Lumpur, where, yes, they get downpours, but generally it's hot and sunny an awful lot more than it is here. Get it every day, after a while, it stopped having that same impact. Okay. From a research perspective, three things at the top three from a research. It's not everything. I mean, looking at pictures of kittens apparently also helps. The ducklings are out on the river in Cambridge at the moment, and if you see those, you just get a little bit of a, oh, aren't they cute? It's just a small thing. It doesn't necessarily last very long, but it happens. Those are small and not lasting. These are longer lasting. So the social networks that you have, and I spoke on networking earlier, and the importance of making those real connections with people, that makes a big difference. So what do you do in the mornings when you arrive at work that enables that to happen? How do you make a connection with people?
Speak to them.
What do you say?
Good morning.
Hey! It's simple, but good morning. It's one of those, how many of you have had someone walk past you and not say good morning to you?
Never, because I always say good morning to
You
them.
say good morning to them, brilliant.
And they have to say
Yeah,
good morning back.
yeah.
The other
But,
person who does the same job as me, she never says hello.
and what do you think, Marie?
I come in and I go, hello, morning.
Yeah, yeah. And then you feel that she's maybe a yeah, exactly, miserable. I was going to use the word grumpy, but yes, yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes I forget to speak. If I'm on a mission, I forget. I often go into
Yeah.
and go straight in, sit at my desk, and then about 10 o'clock I remember I've got a whole team sitting next door. I haven't even put my head around the door.
Yeah.
Because I'm on a...
Yeah, but you're not in their room.
Yeah, I don't even take my coat off, and I go, well, obviously I do because I go into the clinical areas, but I don't even go to my office straight away.
Yeah.
I go and say good morning to
No,
A&E, AM.
I acknowledge that it's not a good thing. It's just that whole sort of, sometimes I'm just...
You're that task
It's not-
focused.
yeah,
Yes.
unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's getting that task and people balance, isn't it? Because if you focus on the task might get done, but what is the
What
detriment?
cost?
Exactly, the cost to the people. So as you say, yeah, don't take your coat off, go and say hello first and then get into what needs to be done. Really interesting, and I acknowledge credit to you for saying that. And just saying, okay, so what difference do you want to make? It's not saying you have to change, but just acknowledge the impact, the cost that it might have of not saying hello in the mornings. So making those social networks, increasing them, and it can be just small things in the workplace. You don't have to have best buddies, but just smiling as you walk along the ward or down the corridor or wherever it is, looking at people in the eye, making that greeting. I mentioned this morning the hello, my name is. Being a person-to-person connection. Really important. Helping others, that comes with your day job. Generally, you might not necessarily see the immediate impact, but that's the whole ethos and the point of the jobs that you do, is that helping others. But if you added something else in there, making somebody a cup of tea, holding the door open, picking up something that somebody has dropped, small things could just make a difference to the other person, and the interesting thing is it does to you. If you buy yourself a present versus buying somebody else a present, your increase in happiness is less. if you buy someone else a present,
Oh, God.
sorry, buy someone else a present, give things away, it increases your level of happiness as the giver for longer. I'm not saying you don't feel good when you buy yourself a present, but you need to just do that level of, it's one of those things where if you give it to yourself, you get a spike, but not a lasting spike. Give it to someone else, the spike lasts for longer. It's interesting. So help others, give things away. And gratitude is the other well-researched one. It used to be, when my granny called it, count your blessings. That was her phrase. Now it's been adopted by psychologists and labelled gratitude. But seriously thinking about, what is it that's gone well during the week? Because, again, it's so easy to focus on what hasn't gone well, what you didn't get done, how somebody spoke to you sharply rather than the praise that you got by somebody else. So finding that way of just acknowledging, it could be once a week. That's said to be sufficient. There is a three things every day mode that you will have maybe heard about as well. It doesn't have to be that regular and that many. For it to have a difference, once a week is sufficient just to reflect back on what has gone well. But taking the time to do it is what's so important. And from an impact perspective and an increase in your confidence and your own happiness and therefore well-being, it will make a difference. So start to really acknowledge what's going well. Because what we also have is inside ourselves, of course, we've got one of these wonderful brains, and I'm just looking for something I've covered up. And our brains tell us stuff about ourselves that isn't always that positive. And what I'm going to invite you to do is take a look inside. We'll take one of those and pass them on. If you would take one of those and pass it on. We are one down, so you'll just have to share. So open it up, it's a mirror, and take a good look at yourself. So you might want to do it alternate. You don't have to both get your face in the mirror at the same time, so just take it in turns.
Here's mine. Go on.
Yeah, you can use your phone. If you've got a mirror on your phone, use it.
See, that's better. Oh, I love that. That's a positive thing.
What's that?
I said, don't look down, look up. No, you don't have all that.
Excellent. So that's the double chin aspect, was it? It's like, don't look down, look up.
Yeah.
Yay. Okay. So tell me, when I said take a good look at yourselves, why did I hear a couple of groans?
No one likes it.
Well, lots of people don't like to look at that.
No, why not?
Because they see what other people see.
Because they see what...
Other people see.
Ah, now you see, do they? They see what other people will see. My question is, do they? Really, do they? What do you see when you look in the mirror? Do you see the wrinkles? Do you see the bags under the eyes? Grey, the hair that's out of place? Maybe the stubble that... No, yours is deliberate. But what we do in our mind's eye when we look at ourselves is we tend to go down that negative route. What do other people see when they see you? Do they pick the same holes? Seriously and realistically, do you honestly think they pick the same holes in you?
My friends tell me
Yeah. Your friends will tell you that you've got grey hair, fine. But
And when you live with men, they constantly tell you.
living with the wrong man.
My husband values his life.
No, thank you.
Although my brother did stand above me the other day and say, God, you've got grey hair. I said, not many people stand taller than me, so...
Yes,
That's all right
yes,
then.
yeah. And actually, does that really matter? When you're at
She's
work...
going bald.
Yeah, there you are then. But when you're at work and you're walking down, should we say the corridor or down to the ward, do people sort of walk past you and, oh, she's got grey hair, oh, that looks out of place, oh, you've got bags under your eyes? do you think that about other people, or do you say, oh, they look busy, or they look harassed, or they look happy today? You just have a more general feeling. They don't do the same nitpicky bits that we do about ourselves. Equally, when you look into that mirror, take another look. Take another look. Who are you when you look into that mirror? Are you a leader?
What?
Are you a leader when you look into that mirror? No, leader. Are you a leader as you look into that mirror? And it's interesting. We again don't view ourselves as others do. I would put it to you that in the roles that you have, other people will look to you for leadership. You don't necessarily view yourself as the leader that other people will see you as being. So have this, just start to really be aware of the mindsets that you hold. And every morning, I think you're most likely to look into the mirror. Every morning, perhaps ladies, we look into the mirror to put our makeup on. Gents, you maybe look into the mirror to shave. You might do it by feel, but generally there's perhaps a look into the mirror to shave. Or when you brush your teeth, there's a mirror often in the bathroom in front of you at that point in time. Start to really think about who you want to be that day for people, rather than just going, oh, it's little old me again, or oh, I've got grey hair, or oh, I'm feeling tired and I've got more wrinkles. Start to really think about what's going on in your mind, because it will make a difference to how you feel. And what I'd like you to do is just take a piece of paper. It could be the back side of the handouts that I've given you. Just take a piece of paper and write down something that you tell yourself in your heads. It might be one sentence, there might be 2 or 3 sentences that crop up. And it could be a situation where at work you've got something that you are getting stuck with, for instance. It could be a regular message that you tell yourself. You may not know it yet, but there are generally messages that we have that we tell ourselves as time goes on. So if something springs to mind now, just write it down. What sort of messages do you tell yourself in your head? Particularly, let's think about particularly when you are going to work or going to a meeting at work. What are some of the things, some of the thoughts? And just notice what you've written down. Is it positive? Is it negative? Or is it sort of neutral and okay-ish? What do you reckon? Would you give yourselves a mark for being positive? Yeah? Positives. We had any negatives written down? Yeah? Some negatives written down too. So be aware of what you're telling yourself on an automatic basis, and then decide whether you want to carry on telling yourself those things. Is it going to help you feel more confident, happier, and have a positive impact that you want to make with both your teams and your patients, or not? And I think thoughts can be a little bit like these rocks in this particular picture. You don't have to get rid of every single one to be able to move that forward. I was in the van in that particular situation, and it's in outer Mongolia. And I thought we'd got lost. We were on our way to the airport. But you had to get out of the van and you had to move a few rocks to be able to move that van forward. It's the same with your thoughts. Sometimes the thoughts are the things that hold us back, the things that stop us doing and stop us achieving. So as was mentioned earlier this morning, I've only been in the job for X number of years. I've not been here since, knee-high to a grasshopper. I've not born and bred, although I love what I do. Or I'm not strategic enough. I don't have enough knowledge. The people around me are far more knowledgeable than I am. Those thoughts can actually prevent you from really doing what you need to do and being who you really are. And it only needs to be 2, maybe 3 that you actually need to move. You can still have negative thoughts. They will occur. Acknowledge them and let them pass. But decide to take control of the ones that you don't want to have. Kick them into touch and change them. Because that will make a difference to your own self-belief, self-confidence, self-worth. So thinking about your thinking and being aware of what it is that's going on. So are you up for an exercise? Yeah? An opportunity to have a stretch. If you're wanting to increase your confidence levels, are we up for having a go at doing something? Yeah. Maybe? Let me phrase it in a different way for a moment for you, and just think about this. There are two states. You have a choice. Yeah? You have a choice now. There's 10 of you in the room. I really only need 4 people. Okay? So I really only need 4 people to do this. So some of you don't need to take part. But to say, are you going to take part or not? Who's going to be one of the first 4 to jump up? The choice is this. You can be either green and growing, or you can be ripe and rotten. If you're wanting to stretch your confidence, increase your confidence, people tend to talk about stretching comfort zones. I think that's wrong. I think comfort zones are comfortable and we're quite happy in them, thank you very much, and why would I want to stretch it? But knowing if I want to increase my confidence, I need to do something different. And if I phrase it this way, it's being green and growing, it acknowledges there are growing pains in amongst that. There's the nervousness. There's sometimes not getting it right. But it stops you from being ripe and rotten. Does that make sense? So who's up for being green and growing? Can I have 4 people stand up, please? Okay. So just tell me a little bit about the difference between the first 3, when you noticed folks were coming on, saying their words quite quickly and going off quite quickly, and the impact that had versus the impact of what I asked Leslie and Colin to do in a more specific, and for Colin particularly doing it a second time, thank you very much, but drawing it out just that fraction longer. What difference does that make from an impact perspective?
Sounds more like a performance when you wait for the pauses.
Sounds more like a performance, yeah.
It made more of an impact.
It made more of an impact. In what way?
I think they came across more confident.
Came across more confident, yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean to say they... yeah, Leslie's going,
Yeah.
Exactly. It doesn't mean to say you felt more confident, but you came across more confident. And this is the bit about making an impact. It doesn't have to be real. It has to be real to the other person. Okay? It's not necessarily all that's going on inside you at that point in time. You don't have to let all of that out. But what you do find is the more you do it, the more it becomes real to you and the other person. So just thinking about how that happens and keeping it going. So do take control of your thoughts. Do take those opportunities to be green and growing, and really then start to think about the impact that you want to make. And I'm just going to run through these slides in sort of fairly quick discussion because we've got 25 minutes left. But that first impression I've already spoken about. We spoke about the handshakes this morning. We spoke about these 3 V's. So what's important is the visual impression that you get when someone was standing and looking at you versus running off quite quickly. Makes a big difference. So the visual, the vocal intonations, and the verbal. So when you then decided to re-say tomato sauce column and you brought the mic back closer to you, again, it has more of an impact, more of a positive impact. So that intonation that you have, the way in which you say things, makes a difference. And this is just a slide that I think illustrates the impact body language has between 2 people. You think about the impact that one has. Who's in charge here? Yeah, you can easily tell, can't you? Then from a moral compass point of view, how do you show the values that you hold from a perspective that you want everybody to show that care and compassion that's been spoken about, those 6 C's that have been mentioned this morning as well? So where do you and how do you show that on a daily basis? Any thoughts?
Role modelling. Role
modelling. So what specifically, what behaviour do you think is really useful to do so others can role model you?
Listen, respect. So you're making them feel valued by listening to them, not
Yeah. So taking that time to listen, it shows you respect the other person. And it's very easy sometimes to sort of jump to conclusions and to finish off people's sentences. But absolutely right, yeah, that's one certainly that would make a big difference. Anything else that springs to mind that you do?
Clinically, I always make a point of chatting to a patient, at least one if I go on a ward. But I always say, good morning, sir, madam. I never know anyone's name, and for the most part, I use quite formal terms, which most people giggle at, but I don't like the casual way in which sometimes people are approached, because you don't know if that's appropriate. So I always go back to the formal, and I always do it in a way, and I always do it if I'm with a student because that's what I would like them to be doing.
Yeah. Yeah, so using a formal approach to patient, unless of course the patient is somebody that you've met before and they've said, please call me X, in which case you respect that request. But if you're meeting somebody for the first time, but making that point to speak to the patient, yes. And can I say, look them in the eye. One of the thoughts that I had when I met my consultant last year for the first time, and she came up and she greeted me, she sort of said, come in, sit down, and immediately went and sat and looked at her notes, rather than looked at me to talk to me about the situation that I needed to be dealt with. It's really interesting and very off-putting. So yeah, it's important to have that connection, eye contact. If you choose to use sir and madam, other people may not. That's also a very personal thing. But if you can use that level of respect or somebody's name. Yeah. Anything else that sprung to mind about those values, how you can show that that moral compass is there to abide by?
Challenge behaviour that you see that's not suitable.
Lovely. Challenge behaviour you see is not suitable. Could I also add in praise behaviour that you see is suitable, is appropriate, and do more of the latter? Definitely challenge the behaviour, absolutely. But you'll find if you start to catch people doing things well, you'll start to spot it. Your mindset will look out for more of that as well. So yeah.
It's about thanks.
It is about thanks. Yes. Yes. Saying thank you. Yeah. And not just the good morning greetings for people, but actually thanking them for their work during the day. Yeah. And meaning it not just as a platitude, because we've also seen that level of, thank you being said and not really being meant. Demonstrating what you're passionate about. I heard a lady speak at an NHS event, and I said to the group earlier on that it was Ruth somebody, and I couldn't remember her name. As soon as I said what she was passionate about, they knew her surname. I say Ruth is passionate about bed sores. Ruth May. Yeah. And known for that passion. So just think, what's your passion? What's the thing that really fires you up? And how can you get known for championing that particular thing? Whatever it is. But just understand what gives you that fire in your belly that's going to say, I'm going to make a difference on this aspect. Because people will then look to you to be championing it, leading it, and ask you for your advice when they need it. We've already spoken about actions and how important they are, linking into growing and increasing confidence. But here there's another quote, Joel Barker, but looking at saying, vision without action is just a dream. Action without vision, just passing the time. But if you've got action with vision, that can change the world. So it's knowing what you want to achieve, why you want to achieve it, and doing something about it. So it's the taking of responsibility that I know has already been somewhere in amongst the posters that Graham's drawing up for us. So just thinking about doing that and showing that you care. As well as the final one, just showing that you equally trust your staff to do things. Trust them to do it right. Praise them when they do. Yes, catch them and find out how you can correct it if they don't. But it's that level of trust. And something that struck me when we were talking about delegating this morning, it's actually, if I ask someone to help share that burden, to take some of the load from me, I'm showing that I trust them. Rather than if I say I'll do it all myself, the perception could be that you don't trust them to do it. Your thoughts are maybe you're being kind, taking on and not asking them to do extra, but it could be a really different thought from the other person. So just think about how you can show more trust to get that impact going. And there's been some research done on, coming back to body language, just thinking about how important it is to stand tall, to be straight, to have a positive posture when you do something. And you'll notice everybody that came to stand here in the middle was standing pretty much with their weight equal on both feet. But it makes a big difference, not just to the impact that you have, but also, interestingly, your hormones. So your testosterone and your cortisol levels, so the levels of stress that you have and the levels of testosterone that you have, will be affected by your posture. And I'd just like to show you a short clip, and then we'll have an example of playing with posture.
Happens, they come in, they spit into a vial. We, for 2 minutes, say, you need to do this or this. They don't look at pictures of the poses. We don't want to prime them with the concept of power. We want them to be feeling power, right? So 2 minutes they do this. We then ask them, how powerful do you feel on a series of items? And then we give them an opportunity to gamble. And then we take another saliva sample. That's it. That's the whole experiment. So this is what we find. Risk tolerance, which is the gambling. What we find is that when you're in the high power pose condition, 86% of you will gamble. When you're in the low power pose condition, only 60%. And that's a pretty whopping significant difference. Here's what we find on testosterone. From their baseline when they come in, high-power people experience about a 20% increase, and low-power people experience about a 10% decrease. So again, 2 minutes and you get these changes. Here's what you get on cortisol. High-power people experience about a 25% decrease, and the low-power people experience about a 15% increase. So 2 minutes lead to these hormonal changes that configure your brain to basically be either assertive, confident, and comfortable, or really stress reactive, and feeling sort of shut down. And we've all had that feeling, right?
Assertive, confident, and comfortable, or stress reactive and shut down. 2 minutes. 2 minutes of a posture. That's it. And the effect lasts for a little while. It doesn't last forever, but it certainly lasts for a little while. It would last for an hour maybe. It's not going to last for necessarily the whole day, but you need to then be conscious about your posture. So if you want to have this level of presence, if you want to think about being more confident, as we've got some words up there from Amy's research, captivating, comfortable, authentic, passionate, and enthusiastic, then really concentrate on not just your thoughts, but also your posture. It will make a difference. And it will make a difference to how people treat you and perceive you. Here, standing up, saying tomato sauce, I'm not saying that the first 3 felt any more or less confident than the last 2. But the impression is very different. And that's what counts. And then people start to treat you as if. And when that starts to happen, you start to believe you can. So really just concentrate and think about that. And when you're looking in the mirror in the mornings, see the leader. See the one that needs to take things forward, that people look to for leadership. And acknowledge for yourselves that there may be some thoughts that get in the way. Because as I said earlier, there were times, and still are times, when I don't feel that confident. When I go back to feeling that little girl's feeling of being shy, being unsure. And when I was growing up, the middle one of 3 girls, not in the picture, but in age, the middle one of 3. And I was the one that failed the 11 plus. My sisters went to grammar school. I was the one that then wasn't academic. I didn't go to university. It wasn't for me. I did my A-levels at Boston Grammar School, which is the Lincolnshire Boston, in case any of you thought I'd been raised in the States and don't have that accent. But the Lincolnshire Boston the Boston College I went to, and my sisters went to the grammar school, did their A-levels at the grammar school. I did an HND in business studies. I didn't go to university because I'm not academic, because I failed the 11 plus, because that's just not who I am. And then it's a couple of years ago, my husband suggested that I applied to do a master's in positive psychology. And I just thought he was joking. What happened was he'd come back from a long walk around England. It's one of those things that he enjoys doing, and did a long charity walk for 8 months and walked 2,500 miles, and we raised awareness of mental health and some money for 2 mental health charities. And when he returned from the walk, I said, okay, you know, that's your thing. What about me? I'd like to go and learn something. So I just asked him to research on the internet, because in my head he's better at doing that than I am. So I asked him to research something that I could learn. And he came back with a master's in applied positive psychology. And after I realised that he wasn't joking, and I'd got over the issues of telling him that the university won't want me, I don't have a first degree, I'm not good enough, I can't possibly do it, I'm not academic, I did put through the application, but he had to help me write that personal statement, because I couldn't possibly say something about me that was good enough to go to university, in my head. I deferred for a year to give myself the chance to do some of the reading, just to get a bit ahead of the game, because I knew it would be tough for me in my head. It is tough, it is challenging, and it is rewarding. I did get a distinction in my first ever academic essay, and my jaw dropped completely. I now have to rethink my mindset. I'm not saying that I'm going to be wholly academic, but now I believe that I can do some of that. I need to work at it. It's not going to be like falling off a log for me, that easy, but it is possible to do. And is there something in your mindset that's holding you back from being the leader that you really need to be within your area? Is there something, maybe from your childhood, that's preventing you from really fulfilling your whole potential? And is it just in your mind? Because they're hugely powerful, and they can empower us, and they can disempower us. So what I'm going to ask you to do now is just take a moment to go back to those thoughts that you wrote earlier, and either to keep them or change them, but to write down an additional thought that you would like to have. So something you could tell yourself that would give you support, that would give you some empowerment, some encouragement. What is it that you would write? So just take a moment and think about a thought that you would like to have, and jot that down on your piece of paper. Okay. One final, oh, sorry, share it in a moment, share it in a moment, if you'd like to.
She's
But
delighted.
just one final thought, that stuff will happen, things will get in the way. And this is a quote I saw on a cafe wall, actually in Great Yarmouth.
Did you fix that off my bedroom wall?
It was in Great Yarmouth that I saw it, and I really liked it. Life isn't about waiting for the storm to pass, it's about learning to dance in the rain. Can I encourage you to go out and do some dancing? Be that man on the hill, give it a bit of a shake, or be the first follower. Go out there and do it. And whilst you do it, remember the impact that you want to make. Thank you.